All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to JV Talks. And what is JV Talks? It's a podcast run by me, Jakub Vanis. I'm your host for today. And it's going to be about the things that interest me, like tech. I'm really into tech, various gadgets or latest, evolutions in AI and machine learning and natural language processing and this kind of stuff. I'm really into this. I'm also into fitness and well-being, so maybe there will be some tips. I'm into leadership tips and life hacks. The other things that I really like are movies or games, video games, or even desk games, and books, really good books. So these are the topics that you can probably expect in this type of podcast. And when it comes to the frequency, I'm not really sure yet how often will I be doing this. So it's not going to be super regular in the beginning, but I really want to do it quite often, let's say weekly by weekly. But my second child, my first son, will be born probably this week or next week. So because of that, I cannot really tell, how often will I be able to do this. But we're in for a long ride. So hang in there. And this is the first episode. So welcome everybody and thanks for tuning in. So today I wanted to talk about Apple Vision Pro. Today is the 2nd of February 2024. And it's the date when it's a release date for Vision Pro. And Vision Pro is a new tool. It's a new thing that Apple launched. It's a totally new category for them. And I find it extremely exciting because I've been part of the Apple ecosystem since I think like 2014 or 13. And of course, I accumulated quite a lot of gadgets and tools from them. So of course, I have an iPhone, but I also have Apple Watch, I have AirPods, I have a MacBook Pro with the M1 chip. We do have an iPad, even though this is an old one, and we also have Apple TV. So I'm really a prototype of some people would say Apple sheep, but I really like that ecosystem a lot. So this is something new that is very, very interesting. However, the first aspect that I wanted to talk about is the pricing, and it's quite an expensive thing. So it is gonna be $3,500 without VAT. So probably with VAT it's quite a bit more. And it's also available only in the US nowadays. You cannot buy this in the UK or in Europe whatsoever. So maybe they're just waiting for the next generation of this to launch around the world. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes. So it's quite pricey. I can imagine, here in Czech Republic, I'm from Czech Republic, it would probably be around 100,000 Czech crowns, which is a price you can pay for a small family car as well. Probably a used one, but still, something to compare it with. So the availability is quite low because you can only get it in the US, and I think they launched with 35,000 units or something like that, and they almost immediately sold out. So of course you can, scout on the internet and eBay to find something, but I would not really recommend that. Now, so what I did is I watched most of the videos from all the famous reviewers. I read a lot of reviews also online on this because usually these reviewers had about a week with Apple Vision Pro, and I just wanted to summarize it for you guys. So when it comes to the packaging, this is something that is extremely impressive. It's a really nice white package design that it comes with. Of course, it is a premium product for this price, so you would have to expect the highest potential, quality. But it's really nice. You can also buy a travel case for about $200 extra. But to be honest, the travel case is kind of the size of a small backpack. So I'm not sure if you're, for example, traveling, via plane, if this is something that even the airlines will allow you to board with. But it's really nice, and it should keep this expensive device protected for some time. Really nice packaging experience. When it comes to the design of Apple Vision Pro, it kind of blends together other devices that Apple has made. It has a digital crown, so called, which is very similar to what Apple Watches and Apple Watch Ultra have. The design also resembles AirPods, the AirPods Max version, especially because of this loop, solo loop, band, or the thing that kind of holds it on your head. It's very, very similar to that. It also resembles the newest iPhone a little bit, but in terms of the design, it is made out of very expensive materials and it looks premium, right? So it's aluminum and it's glass, and it doesn't look like the other headsets that are out there. And with the other headsets, I mean mainly the Meta Quest 3, or I, for example, have the PlayStation VR 2. So this doesn't look like that, because these are usually made out of plastic in order to save some weight, which is a deliberate choice. And Apple didn't go that way. They went with premium materials, but of course then, they suffer on the weight part. Because the weight of this thing is 660 grams, I think. And it's about 20% heavier than the Meta Quest 3. And usually the reviewers were mentioning this as a downside, that this is something that you can really feel, that it's quite heavy, especially on the front side of your face and just below your eyes. You can really feel it. And most of the people were saying that they can wear this thing for about 45 minutes maximum, and then they really need a break, because otherwise it's just too much. But Apple packaged with these two types of kind of bands that are holding this. There is a solo band, and there is a dual loop, or how do they call it? So the solo is the one that you see in the commercials. It's this tightly knit material, really stretchy, looks super nice and premium, and doesn't mess up your hair that much. But it is gonna make you feel that weight a little bit more. This dual loop also goes over your head, so it should be a little bit more comfortable to use it for a longer period of time. Now, let's talk about what it is actually. So this is basically a virtual reality headset, or Apple, wants this to be an AR headset, the augmented reality headset. And it is kind of a step into that direction, but it is a VR headset. Apple calls this spatial computing. They specifically never mentioned VR in any of their keynotes, but this is what it is. It's a VR headset, just like any other ones that I mentioned before. Now, when it comes to the setup of this thing, it is quite fast. There is no room setup. Usually in these VR headsets, you need to look around and measure your rooms to kind of set up the boundaries, etc. This doesn't have that. It was usually very fast when the reviewers were doing this. It took them about a minute. So you start with setting up eye tracking, which is quite easy. You just follow certain dots, around your environment. That kind of calibrates your eye tracking experience, and that should be very fast, like 45 seconds or something like that. You can also set up your persona that takes another 30 seconds or maximum 1 minute, but I don't think that you have to use it for the very first time that you're having this on. What is very good is that, usually these VR headsets, for example, my PSVR 2 headset has a so-called sweet spot, and what it means is that there is a very tiny space or configuration where you have to have this VR on your eyes and on your head. And if it's not there, it's gonna become blurry and it's gonna make you dizzy. And apparently Apple doesn't have that. So you kind of are good to go since the first time that you put it on. Apple even has cameras inside the headset, so it will automatically, put the lenses as close to your eyes as possible and divide them properly. What you also set up is something called Optic ID, and that's kind of like a Touch ID or Face ID, but for your eyes. So it scans your retina, and it knows that it's you, the user of this headset. Unfortunately, you cannot set up more people to use this headset since the beginning, maybe in the next generation. Now let's talk about the displays. So the displays for your lenses are a little bit more than 4K per each eye, and everybody is really praising them, that they are the sharpest displays that they've seen in such a device. Some of the people went so far that they even said that it's basically almost indistinguishable from real life from what you can see with your eyes. I cannot tell, I didn't have it on my eyes yet, but it sounds extremely exciting. So 4K per eye is quite high density, and you should be able to see just right. And if you are using some prescription lenses or something like that, they even have a solution for that. They have a partnership with Zeiss, and you can buy them. The ones for reading are for about, I think, $100 for a pair, and the ones for distance, they are $150. That would be my case. I have 0.5 dioptries. But yeah, I recommend, if you're having glasses in your normal life, then you would need to order it with these prescription lenses. But the installation is super easy. They are automatically magnetically attached, so you just put them closer and they click in place. It's super nice. One thing that people were really praising in those reviews is the so-called pass-through. So what is pass-through is basically your ability to look through this headset to the outside world. And apparently you kind of realize that you're looking at screens, that it is not the real world, but it's almost indistinguishable. Like the colors and the resolution is really incredible. And they were even doing stuff like, one of the reviewers went skiing with this, which is quite incredible and not really recommended to try to anybody. MKB HD was playing table tennis with this, and he was just fine, because there is, I think, the ping of just 12 milliseconds or something like that. So should be super fast and super responsive. And actually all of this is possible thanks to the 12 cameras that are constantly monitoring, what's around you. They monitor your hands, they monitor your surroundings, and they even watch your eyes, what they're doing. So 12 cameras in this thing. Apple has packed quite a lot of technology into this device. Let's talk about audio. So Apple Vision Pro has 2 spatial speakers, and these are kind of directed towards your ears, and apparently they are super high quality. People are always very surprised how qualitative these are, and they recreate kind of a 3D sound, so they really like it. I thought that you would have to have AirPods Max or something like that to pair this with for a full immersion, but apparently this is not needed. But one downside is that since these are kind of open speakers, people can kind of hear what you're looking at or what you're hearing yourself. It's not that much. There is just a tiny spillover, but it is there. So something to know. Now, how do you control this thing? How do you actually use it? So apparently it's super intuitive. You put it on your eyes. Let's say a board of apps appears in front of you, which is really resembling the iPad version or the iOS version. So for any Apple user, it should be very, very similar to what they're used to. But how do you control this is because there are no controllers. Usually these VR headsets, they have special controllers attached to them. This doesn't have it. So what you're using is just your hands. And these cameras on the headset, they are constantly watching your hands. Okay, you cannot really put it behind your back, but almost anywhere they will be able to see it. So you look at a thing that you want to interact with, and then you just tap your fingers together like this. And this makes it click. And apparently this is super nice and almost feels like magic, but it's something that you need to get used to. And apparently we're not really used to this yet as, humankind, because you are usually when you're interacting with a computer or something like that, you might be clicking on something but looking at something else. You don't even realize it. Here you deliberately need to look at exactly what you want to click on all the time, no exceptions. So that will just get some getting used to and rewiring your brain a little bit, I think. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk about is keyboard. There are 3 typing experiences possible in the headset, actually 4. So the first one is there is a virtual keyboard that just, floats in front of you. However, it cannot track 10 fingers. What it tracks is just your pointing fingers. So you have just 2 fingers and you're kind of poking into space. What is a little bit bad is that there's no feedback, right? Usually you would have like a vibration or something like that with the controllers. Here, there's nothing like that, so you need to do this, and that's kind of cumbersome and slow. So some people were recommending the second type, which is looking at the letter that you want to type and then putting your fingers together. And apparently this is a little bit faster, still feels very cumbersome. But the next thing that you can use, the last one, is basically Siri, and just say what you want, and it listens to you and it will type it for you. But yeah, for some languages, like I am from Czech Republic, here it is probably gonna be a little bit more buggy. But yeah, I think for English speakers it should be just fine. And the fourth type, how you can actually use your keyboard, is connect any Bluetooth keyboard or your MacBook, and you can just type right on that very, very fine. Let's talk about battery life now. So the battery is, I think, roughly over 3000 milliamp hours, and that's kind of a size of an iPhone battery. But the battery, and this is actually a very good point, is separate. That's how Apple tries to kind of save on weight with this. So you need to have your battery constantly attached to this device, and yeah, you are probably supposed to have it in your pocket or something like that. Apple is claiming that it will give you about 2 hours of usage, which is not that much, but the actual reviewers were saying that it's quite a bit more, around 3 hours usually. And if you're just watching videos or movies or something like that, it should get almost towards 3.5 or 4 hours. So that's not that bad. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is so-called personas. So what is a persona? It's a kind of virtual representation of yourself in the Apple ecosystem. Because if you're gonna have Zoom calls and FaceTime calls, etc., and this is on your head, then how do you look to other people? So Apple has solved it with creating a virtual 3D kind of avatar of yourself. The setup of this is very easy. You just look into 4 directions, you smile with your teeth and without your teeth, you close your eyes, you blink, you put your eyebrows up, and then you're done. And the only kind of unfortunate thing with this is that you will always wear the same things, same clothes. If your hair was messy or something like that, it will always stay in this persona, so you would have to update it. And it kind of looks like a, old, PlayStation 3 graphics or something like that. There's a lot of uncanny valley with this, but I think you can really get used to it. The tech is quite incredible. It even tracks your hands. So if you're using hands while speaking, it's gonna be definitely visible in that, though it's still very, very stiff. So something to know about. But Apple claims it's in beta. It's probably gonna be in beta for quite some time, I think, until they figure it out. But if you remember, Mark Zuckerberg was once sharing a picture from Meta version of this, and he looked really cartoony, really, really bad. This looks nothing like it. This looks actually quite usable at this moment, but yeah, I cannot imagine how this is gonna look like, 3 years down the road or something like that. It's gonna be really, really like a deep fake. So next thing that I wanted to talk about are those eyes. If you've seen any of these promotion materials for Vision Pro, there are constantly eyes that are kind of on top of the display, and this is not really for you. This is more for your surroundings, your family and your co-workers to know if you're looking at them or if you're immersed in your environment. They call it eyesight, and honestly, for Apple, doing quite a lot of marketing around it, the eyes, they don't really show that much. It's a really dim kind of display, low resolution. It looks kind of weird. It's good that it's there, but I think this is leaving quite a lot of things on the table still. So let's see how they improve it in the next generation. Next thing I wanted to talk about is immersion. So the headset has a dial on top of it that, like I said, is like a digital crown on Apple Watch, and you can dial in immersion or dial out. And what does it mean is that you can choose a virtual environment that you want to be in. There's, for example, Moon, there is Yosemite and various different national parks, and it's really, really beautiful. They are not realistic, they are actually recreated on a computer with 3D graphics, but they look really super, super nice. And you can fully immerse yourself if you're in an environment where you just wanna tune out basically from The OS, the Vision OS, like I said, is based on iPad OS, and it kind of shows, it's very glassy, super nice and modern, looks very nice, but that's kind of the downside as well. They are not really playing too much with 3D effects, so I would imagine that, for the very first virtual headset, they would use all the space around you and all the 3 dimensions, but it kind of creates, let's say, screens, 2D screens in front of you that you have to interact with. But the system is responsive. It's run by M2 chip, so it's very fast and responsive, and I think you would enjoy it. Now, the next thing that I wanted to touch upon is apps. So apps, unfortunately, you cannot move them around. I think they are in alphabetic order. But since you can use any apps from any iPad or from any iPhone, there's hundreds of thousands of apps that you can use this way. But like I said, most of them are going to be 2D, so it's not an ideal thing. You can just use them on your iPad or on your iPhone. Why would you want to use this in your super expensive VR headset? But what I saw and really liked is the Apple's meditation app. That this looks super, super nice and immersive. I think you will enjoy it a lot. There are some video streaming apps. Disney Plus did a really good job because they also transferred a lot of their movies into 3D, and it looks super, super nice. There is also Paramount Plus, I think, and Apple TV Plus. But for example, there's no YouTube or Netflix app, which is weird. Apparently, Netflix said that they don't want to jump onto this bandwagon just yet because they don't know if it's gonna flop. I'm not sure if this is gonna flop. Definitely not in the long run. And they have quite a lot of developers that can just work on an app or prepare an app for this. It's a weird stance from their side. I think there's something else behind this. So no Netflix or YouTube app, but you can use both of them in Safari. You can open a browser and just open those streaming apps there. Then there is apparently a great app called DJ, and you can become a virtual DJ, and that looks like a lot of fun. People are praising Apple's Keynote app, which is like a PowerPoint. It is looking quite great, and actually you can test your PowerPoint in a Steve Jobs theater. So it feels like you are really on the stage, and yeah, this is how you can test your presentation in front of an audience. There is an app called Chickspace that I think MKBHD was really praising. So what it does is there's thousands of real life objects that you can kind of put into your space in the real size and just take them apart. He was playing with a Formula One, for example, and that looked really incredible. There was one reviewer that was cooking with this. There was a cooking app. I would not really recommend it, but what I found great is that, she had constantly in the corner of her eye or in the corner of the room, she had the recipe. And she could put various timers over the vessels, over the dishes, and that looked really nice. It's kind of floating over them. Yeah, I think there's something in this. There were a lot of people that were praising sports apps and the potential that this has, because it can give you all the different statistics and data. There was an NBA app that was showcased, and that looked really incredible. So you can watch multiple matches at once and have all the stats going live. It is really nice, and I think this is kind of a killer app for this. Otherwise, for almost basically a VR headset, there are not that many fitness apps or VR games, which is a little bit disappointing. But mark my words, in about a year from now, there's gonna be plenty. Now, let's talk about the ecosystem. So this is part of the Apple's ecosystem, and what really works super well is there is a MacBook handoff. So you can open your Mac, and it will recognize that you opened your Mac, and it will just kind of project your screen, and you can make it as big as you want. You can make it 4 meters wide or something like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't support multiple monitors for some reason. I don't know why you cannot have 2 displays. Normally with MacBook you can attach more displays, but this one just allows you to use one. But then on top of it, you can open other windows and just basically surround yourself with screens. Which is kind of, for a working person, the best use case for this type of a thing. And it sounds very exciting. It's really pairing super nicely, and Apple's handoff has been always super, super nice. So I think the killer app for this system currently is this, using it with your Mac for work. Then people were praising spatial photos, which you can take with your iPhone 15. So they feel like a memory. It's a little bit hazy around them, and they are really 3D, and people are just the right size. So it feels like you're looking back into a memory, and this is what Apple was aiming for. But also just looking at or revisiting your old panoramas that you took pictures of feels really, really nice, because they are super immersive and you can stretch them just fully around yourself, and that's something I'm really looking forward to try. And yeah, I would say just watching content and movies, especially on Disney Plus or Apple TV Plus, I think this is gonna be really, really nice for you to use. But if you have a family, yeah, why would you just have a headset, right? You have a TV at home, you probably want to watch it with your family. So now we're at the end, so let's just summarize this. So who is this device for, right? It's $3,500 without VAT, so probably touching the price tag of almost $4,000, especially if you also buy this travel case and this kind of stuff. And it's only available in the US. So since it's a first generation and they only made 35,000 of these, I would say that this is basically made only for the biggest fans and mainly for the developers, because they want developers to jump on this bandwagon and start developing crazy 3D stuff, super immersive AR experiences into this. So I think this is for them, and secretly in the background, Apple is working on a cheaper headset, cheaper version of this that would be available probably in a year or two or something like that, and hopefully also outside of US. Cheaper doesn't mean that much cheaper. I think it can be probably like $2,000 or something like that. This still has so much tech in it, 12 cameras and 2 4K displays, etc., that it probably will be a cost of 2 iPhones or something like this. But I cannot wait for that future. I think it's going to be extremely exciting. And yeah, I don't know if this is going to replace iPhone in one day. Probably, this is just a stepping stone for what's to come, and it's going to become kind of AR glasses, like Meta has those, that just look like Ray-Ban glasses, but it projects all of these objects on top of your normal view. So this is where we're gonna be, hopefully in 5 to 10 years or something like that. But for a first generation product, this looks really promising, and I'm really envious of my US friends that they can test it out. And yeah, I cannot just go to an Apple store and test it out myself. So thanks a lot for listening. This has been the very first episode of JV Talks. I hope you learned something new. We've been talking about Apple Vision Pro, the very new VR headset, or spatial computing as Apple calls it. And I'm going to be coming back to you with other topics from what interests me, like I said, tech, movies, games, fitness, well-being, etc. So thanks a lot for spending time with me. It's been a pleasure, and looking forward to catch you next time. Cheers!